Before we jumped into the stream, Eva mentioned that she was kind of a witness to the drone attack that happened out, in the Moscow region. So can you tell us a little bit about that, because it's so recent?
Sure. I didn't see the attack, but so basically where I live, it's in the vicinity of where one woman, 46-year-old woman, was killed. It's not that far away. And so what was it? Just after 2 yesterday morning, I woke up and I didn't realize why I woke up. And then after I kind of like was fully awake, I understood that I woke up because I heard air defense shooting at something, so a drone. And then over the course of the next some hours, I don't remember how many air defense shots there were, but they're very loud. And the only reason I make that point is that my dogs were bothered by it, and one of them was panicking. So I was awake the rest of the early morning trying to calm her. But because I was awake, I could hear the sound of drones. Now it was a different sound because in Gaza, we heard the drones directly above, and not just one, but like tens or dozens or even hundreds, I don't know. And so it was a very chaotic sound, like a train wreck in the sky, like, all these different tones clashing above you. What I heard yesterday morning, it wasn't above me, it was in the region. So it was a different type of sound. It wasn't the same buzzing sound, but it's definitely a drone, and it was kind of coming and going. And so I didn't see the attacks, but then, again, I heard all the air defense. And then the news came in that 3 buildings in this district, not too far from where I am, were hit by drone attacks. So today I actually went. Yesterday I had obligations, I couldn't get there, but today I went and actually met with a friend's sister who lived in one of the buildings, not a building that was attacked, but she and her boyfriend were in the building, in the apartment. And after they heard the air defense, they woke up, and she heard, let's see, it was one of the buildings was impacted first. And she went out and she was standing on the balcony, and she was able to film the impact of the building directly across where the woman was killed. And so basically she was just telling me about that. And I filmed to the 3 buildings today. So there's pretty massive holes in each of the 3 buildings. Thankfully, it wasn't more than one person killed, but it's still tragic that one person was killed. It's completely, like, I made sure to film, of course, that it is a completely civilian area. There's nothing, just like in Donetsk when they attacked, there's nothing military there. It was shocking that they reached to it's the southeast of Moscow. So, and about 10 days prior, they'd also sent drones into this region. It was a bit later, it was around 6 or 6:30 or so that I woke to the air defense. So, yeah.
How is it perceived? How is it perceived there? Is it perceived as terrorism? Because, like you're saying, it's not like there's a military target and collateral damage happens to be civilian. It's a purely residential area. It sounds like it's almost a suburb. So there's really nothing there to attack. So from where I sit, it seems to be this desperate acts in the plural, right, of intimidation and terrorism. But how is it being perceived by the locals?
So, I mean, I wasn't able to talk to that many locals. So, but the young woman I was speaking with, she was like, we don't know how to deal with it. We're not accustomed to it. So unfortunately in Kursk now they've become accustomed to it. In Donbass, they've had since 2014 for it to become normal. So when Ukraine shells there, depending on how it is, people either just like, it's normal, or they at least run to the basement or something. Here, people don't have the instincts because they haven't been experiencing that. So that's one thing she emphasized to me. By the way, I actually met a man from Kursk in this district. So I was filming one of the buildings and talking with this young lady, about her experience. And then this man walked by and he said something. We ended up talking. And so then I asked, when it came out that he was from Kursk, I asked if I could film him. So I did. I have to go back. I don't remember exactly everything he said, but I think he said he'd come from Kursk because of the situation there, come here about a week ago, and then this happens. He did stress that in Kursk, people, the army and people are doing their utmost to help the civilians there with humanitarian supplies. And obviously the people there are grateful for that. But so I can't say, like, for example, I can't say exactly what if people here are saying is terrorism. I'm saying is terrorism. The friends I know are saying is terrorism. It's clearly terrorism, and as you rightly said, it seems like an act of desperation, and also, Kiev trying to show that they can that they're winning. Their desperate, unhinged belief that they're winning. Um, by striking, because I guess they monitor Telegram channels. So the fact that people will be terrified because they're not accustomed to these drone attacks, then Kiev tries to politicize that and monetize that by saying, look, we're instilling fear in the heart of Moscow, but it's really terrorism.
Would you draw parallels between the Kiev government and some of these actual self-proclaimed rebel groups in other places that you've seen? Because this is sort of the official government. I mean, minus the fact that Zelensky lost his mandate and he's technically a president who is not a president. But do you see any of that here, or are the two very different?
No, the parallel is the terrorism of civilian areas. So, like, what if you're referring to when you said so-called rebels, I assume you meant in Syria, correct?
Right. Somewhere like
Yeah,
Syria, basically these, AQ and other groups like that.
yeah. So, like, in my experience in Damascus, from 2014 on, like when I would stay in the old city, they would choose the terrorists. The terrorists in Eastern Ghouta would choose times when they knew there'd be the most people on the streets. So morning when people are going to work or children were going to school, that's when they would send the mortars. Or late afternoon when people are coming from school and work. And so the intent was to kill as many people as possible, maim as many people as possible. I don't know if in their warped mind they thought that would force the people to turn against the government, but logically it wouldn't, because people knew who was doing it. If anything, it bolstered support for the government. And that seems to be what Kiev is doing as well. Like, that's what they've been doing to the Donbass republics for years, and to Kursk now, and other areas on the border with Ukraine. So it's definitely, there's the parallel of this infantile mindset, thinking that, and also the disregard for lives. And I mean, that's also, Israel, how they view Palestinians as not human, how Kiev views people in the Donbass or Russians in general as not human. That's another parallel that is very important, because, I have to stress, I don't know if people believe me when I say it, but when I talk with people in the Donbass or here, I don't hear the same hatred for Ukrainians. Yeah, for Kiev. Yeah, for the Nazis, but not for average Ukrainians. I don't hear that. And I'm sure there must be random people that have that hatred, but it's not overwhelmingly what I hear. And even when I went to one front line outside of Donetsk before Avdiivka, and spoke with commanders there with a couple other journalists, and asked them, like, do you have friends in Ukraine? Of course we do. Do you hate Ukrainians? Of course we don't. We hate Kiev. We hate what they're doing. But to Ukrainians, no, we don't hate them. So I do think that's important to mention, because this hatred that the regime in Kiev has, or the Israeli regime has for Palestinians, or the terrorist and their backers had for Syrian civilians, especially civilians that were Alawis from the coastal areas. Oh, they hated those people. I've not seen that, including in Gaza. In Gaza, one of the most battered places on earth, I did not see the hatred, in spite of what the propagandists say, I did not see the hatred for Jews in general or for Israelis in general. The hatred was for the system that was oppressing them. So I think that's an important point
It
to
definitely
stress.
is, because I think that usually the perception is when there is war, there's the logical consequence of dehumanization, and it happens all across the board. But what you're describing then is actually much more specific, and more specific, like you're saying, to the governments that are carrying out these, attacks on the civilian population.